Yeah, well, it was 2001 that we became aware of plans to do a fairly large development in the block bound by Little Lonsdale Exhibition and Spring Street. We'd known from previous archaeological work a very large excavation done in that site in 1988, 1989, known as the Little Lon excavation. We'd known that there was a lot of significant archaeology in that part of town, and that if there was going to be another large development, there needed to be a significant archaeological project done before the development took place. Heritage Victoria's role in the project was really one of a management role. We didn't actually do the excavation work. In fact, there wasn't an archaeology company in Victoria large enough to take on a project of this size. So a consortium was organised, so we brought together all of these groups and they were able to undertake the work. There are a number of reasons why the Little Lon area was considered to be really significant from an archaeological perspective. The first thing was the size of the project. The proposed development was taking up about a third of a city block. In fact, the project that ended up taking place was the largest historical archaeological project that's ever taken place in Victoria. We worked there for more than 3 months and close to 500,000 artefacts were recovered. The area's been under asphalt, it's been a car park since the 1950s. So we had a really intact landscape, and we were very hopeful that when we removed the car park, we'd find this early landscape of Melbourne largely intact.
The museum holds all the objects that were found in both the archaeological digs in Little Lon. There are about 300,000 items. They've all come into the museum where they've been sorted and cleaned, registered and catalogued. With Little Lon, historians and archaeologists have been working together to find out what we can about life in that area in the 19th century.
This was a very interesting part of Melbourne. Particularly in the late 19th century, in the late 1800s. This was a part of Melbourne that had a reputation as a red light district. It has also been called the slumlands of Melbourne. But beyond that, we were aware that other things were going on as well.
The people who lived in Little Lon were generally the working poor, who often leave very, very few written records. Historians can draw on many sources of evidence. This is a daily record written by Sister Esther, the leader of a group of Anglican nuns who moved into the area in 1888. The daybook gives us a wonderful picture of a crowded, sometimes chaotic area. On March the 7th, 1889, for example, Sister Esther records that they visited sick Willie. She visited the Children's Hospital, and she was sent for to keep peace between a drunken woman and a man. Little Lon had a really bad reputation as a place of brothels and pubs and opium dens.
Yeah, the findings from the dig are really interesting. I think in some quarters there was an expectation that we would find the archaeology of poverty and perhaps the archaeology of perversion, or the red light district sort of played out in terms of the artefacts that were found. We know from historical sources that there were a large number of brothels active in this area at the time. But equally, we find a lot more than that. We find evidence of more reputable businesses. We find evidence of families that are being raised, of children that are being educated as well.
There are some rate books from Little Lon which document the rates paid by residents to the City of Melbourne. And these are fantastic sources because they can tell us the names of the people who lived in the area, people from all over the world who came to Little Lon. Little Lon was also a place where many families lived. The archaeological record relates largely to the late 19th century, so we don't have any direct oral histories of that time, but we were lucky to be able to collect an oral history from Marie Owen, who was born in the area in 1920. One of Marie's memories is of the weekly dose of cleansing medicine that she received every Friday afternoon after school. And the museum has a number of bottles of cod liver oil and other medicines in its collection that were used to keep children regular.
I think another point of interest is what we call the cultural diversity of the area. We know from historical records that there are Chinese, there are Europeans living and working in Little Lon at this time, but we don't find a big signature of those people in the archaeology. What I suspect is happening is that the objects that these people would traditionally use aren't necessarily available in Melbourne at this time. To me, the archaeology of the Little Lon area reflects the complexity of what's going on, and it's almost a warning that we shouldn't generalise about the way people will live their lives.
Melbourne is a young city, established for less than 200 years. We're really lucky that the archaeological record, together with historical evidence, gives us the opportunity to understand a lot about the first generation of settlers in our city and the texture of their daily life.